On a cold March night in 1960, inside the dark corridors of Paramount Studios, a woman's scream echoed through the empty halls. The technical crew ran toward the sound. It was coming from the makeup room. When they opened the door, the scene before them froze everyone in place. Young actress Janet Leigh had collapsed to the floor, covering her face with her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. Standing against the wall was Alfred Hitchcock, holding a small box. That cold, calculated smile spread across his face. He spoke calmly, almost gently. He told Janet it was only a rehearsal. He said he needed her to look that terrified for the shower scene in Psycho. He needed authenticity. He needed real fear. But the crew knew better. Hitchcock's rehearsals were never just rehearsals. What began that night would evolve into one of Hollywood's darkest director-actress relationships. And the real story would only surface years later, spilling from the lips of another blonde actress, Tippi Hedren. When Alfred Hitchcock discovered Tippi, she was a simple model working in commercials. She lived far from Hollywood dreams, content with an ordinary life, until one day, Hitchcock saw her in a television advertisement. That blonde hair, those icy blue eyes, that distant elegance. Hitchcock had found exactly what he was searching for. His new obsession. Within 8 weeks, he reached out to her. First an invitation, then a dinner, followed by a 6-page letter. In it he praised her. He promised to make her a star, and he made one single demand. She had to belong completely to him. At the time, Tippi believed this was simply a professional contract. She was wrong. Hitchcock made her sign a 7-year agreement. But this was not a contract. It was a document of ownership. Tippi could not choose which projects to work on, what clothes to wear, which parties to attend, or even who to speak with. Everything was under Hitchcock's control. When production began on The Birds, Tippi would see the true face of the arrangement. On the first day, Hitchcock approached her and whispered softly. He told her he would make her a star. But first, he said, he had to break her. That sentence was not a metaphor. It was a threat, and Hitchcock kept his promise. The most famous scene in The Birds shows Tippi trapped in an attic, attacked by wild birds. According to the script, the scene was supposed to last only a few seconds. Hitchcock made her repeat it for 5 consecutive days. With real birds. Years later, when Tippi spoke about those scenes, her hands still trembled. She recalled how they told her the birds would be mechanical, but they were real, living, wild creatures. Trainers hurled them at her. They scratched her eyes, her face. Hitchcock wanted her to scream. He wanted real screams. On the 5th day, Tippi collapsed. There was a deep scratch near her eye. Blood ran down her cheek. The crew wanted to stop filming. Hitchcock refused. He told her to do it one more time. But this time, he said she needed to be more afraid. Tippi fainted on set that day. Doctors forced her to rest for a week. Hitchcock called her and said only one thing. He told her he had been worried, but the scene, he added, was perfect. This was only the beginning. As filming progressed, Hitchcock's obsession deepened. He began entering Tippi's dressing room without warning. He followed her between sets. He instructed the technical crew to report anyone who spoke to her, anyone who came too close. One day, Tippi was caught having coffee with an older actor. Hitchcock stormed into the room in a rage and fired the actor from the project. He gave no reason, no explanation. He simply turned to Tippi with that cold stare and said the only person allowed to speak with her was him. Tippi was now a prisoner. But the real nightmare would begin during the filming of Marnie. In that film, Hitchcock would push Tippi into an even darker role, and in the process, he would completely destroy her. The script for Marnie was disturbing. It told the story of a kleptomaniac woman with a traumatic past, controlled by a manipulative man. Hitchcock told Tippi the role had been written specifically for her, but in reality, the male character in the script was Hitchcock himself. When filming began, his instructions became increasingly personal. He tried to control not just how Tippi moved or spoke, but how she breathed, how she looked, even how she felt. In one scene, Tippi had to portray a character being assaulted. During rehearsal, Hitchcock walked up to her and whispered in her ear. He told her she needed to be truly vulnerable, truly afraid. He said he had to feel it. Tippi could not hold back her tears. She told him she could not do it. Hitchcock stepped back and replied in a cold tone. He said she would do it, because he reminded her she belonged to him. That night, Tippi returned to her hotel room and looked in the mirror. She had become someone she did not recognize. Hitchcock was no longer just a director. He was a manipulator who controlled every moment of her existence. But the worst was yet to come. During the Marnie shoot, Hitchcock called Tippi into his office one afternoon. He closed the door and walked toward her. Her heart pounded violently in her chest. He told her he loved her, but his voice carried no warmth. It was the voice of possession. Tippi froze. She reminded him she was married. She tried to speak, but he raised his hand and silenced her. He told her what she was did not matter. What mattered was what he wanted her to be. Tippi fled from that room, but she knew this was only the beginning. The next day, Hitchcock acted as if nothing had happened. He smiled at Tippi. He spoke professionally, but the dark sense of ownership in his eyes had not disappeared. Everyone on set could feel the tension. Hitchcock could no longer tolerate Tippi speaking with other actors. During one scene, when Tippi had a natural conversation with her co-star Sean Connery, Hitchcock stopped the take. He said they looked too familiar. He ordered them to keep their distance. Sean looked confused. He pointed out that the script called for intimacy in that moment. Hitchcock interrupted coldly. He reminded Sean that he had written the screenplay, and now he said he was changing it. Tippi was no longer an actress. She had become a puppet. When the film wrapped, Tippi thought she would finally be free. But Hitchcock had different plans. He sent her a script for the next project. Tippi refused. Hitchcock's response was cold and absolute. He reminded her of the contract. She could not refuse. Tippi went to her lawyer, but Hitchcock had crafted the agreement so tightly that for 7 years Tippi could not work on any project without his permission, and Hitchcock refused to give it. Tippi Hedren's career ended that day. Hitchcock never cast her in another film, but he also blocked other directors from hiring her. He punished her because she had refused to belong to him. Years passed in silence. Tippi disappeared from the industry. Hitchcock continued making masterpieces. The world celebrated his genius. No one asked about the blonde actress who had vanished. But Tippi never forgot. In 2016, decades after Hitchcock's death, Tippi Hedren finally spoke. She recounted those dark days. She exposed Hitchcock's obsession, his manipulations, his psychological torture. She said he was not a genius. She called him a monster, and she made it clear she had been his greatest victim. But Tippi was not the only one. Janet Leigh, the star of Psycho, had also suffered under Hitchcock's control. The infamous shower scene, one of cinema's most iconic moments, had been a nightmare to film. Hitchcock made Janet repeat the scene for 7 days. 78 camera setups, every angle designed to maximize her vulnerability. Janet later admitted she could never take a shower again without feeling afraid. Hitchcock had embedded fear so deeply in her mind that it never left. She said he did not just direct the scene, he lived inside it. He wanted her terror to be permanent. And it was another actress, Vera Miles, had been Hitchcock's obsession before Tippi. He had cast her in The Wrong Man and groomed her for Vertigo. But when Vera became pregnant, Hitchcock was furious. He saw it as a betrayal. He replaced her with Kim Novak and never forgave her. For years he refused to work with her again. He punished her for choosing motherhood over his vision. Kim Novak, who replaced Vera in Vertigo, faced her own torment. Hitchcock wanted her to look exactly like another actress he had been obsessed with. He controlled her wardrobe, her hair, even her makeup. Kim once said she felt like a ghost of someone else, forced to become a woman she was not. Every blonde actress who entered Hitchcock's orbit became part of the same cycle. He elevated them. He controlled them, and when they resisted, he destroyed them. Grace Kelly was the only one who escaped. She had starred in 3 Hitchcock films and became his ultimate muse. But when she married Prince Rainier of Monaco and left Hollywood, Hitchcock was devastated. He begged her to return. He wrote her letters, he sent scripts. But Grace never came back. Hitchcock spent the rest of his career searching for another Grace Kelly, and every blonde actress who followed paid the price for not being her. For decades, Hollywood protected Hitchcock's legacy. His films were studied in universities. His techniques were praised by critics. But behind every masterpiece was a woman who had been broken. Tippi Hedren's confession in 2016 shattered the myth. She did not speak with bitterness. She spoke with clarity. She wanted the world to know the truth. Hitchcock was a master of suspense on screen. But off-screen, he was a master of control, obsession, and cruelty. Tippi described how he monitored her every move, how he sent spies to follow her, how he made sure she could not work, could not escape, could not breathe without his permission. She said he told her once that he owned her, not her talent, not her image. When Tippi finally broke free from the contract, her career was over. She was 40 years old. Hollywood had moved on. Hitchcock had made sure of that. But Tippi did not disappear. She became an animal rights activist. She built a sanctuary for big cats. She found a new purpose far from the shadows of Hitchcock's control. Still, the scars remained. In interviews, Tippi was asked if she ever forgave Hitchcock. She paused before answering. She said forgiveness was not the point. Understanding was. She wanted people to understand that behind the genius, behind the accolades, behind the iconic films, there was a man who saw women not as collaborators, but as possessions. Hitchcock died in 1980. He never apologized. He never acknowledged the pain he caused. To the end, he believed he had done nothing wrong. His final years were marked by bitterness. He had not made a successful film in over a decade. The industry had changed. Audiences wanted new voices. Hitchcock felt forgotten. Some say his obsession with control eventually consumed him. He could no longer adapt. He could no longer create. He could only demand, and the world stopped listening. Tippi Hedren outlived him by decades. She watched as the truth slowly surfaced. Other actresses began speaking out. Stories emerged. Patterns became clear. Hitchcock's reputation, once untouchable, began to crack. Today, film schools still teach his techniques, but they also teach the cost. They discuss the ethics. They ask the hard questions. Can we separate the art from the artist? Can we celebrate the work while condemning the man? Tippi believes we must. She says his films are important, but so are the voices of the women he silenced. She has spent her final years ensuring those voices are heard. She has spoken at universities, written memoirs, and appeared in documentaries. She refuses to let the truth be buried again. Because for too long, Hollywood protected its gods. It worshipped genius and ignored cruelty. It built empires on the suffering of those who had no power to fight back. But Tippi fought back, not with violence, not with revenge, but with truth. And that truth is simple. Alfred Hitchcock was a master of cinema, but he was also a master of control. He created suspense on screen by manufacturing fear off-screen. He manipulated audiences by first manipulating the women who trusted him. His legacy is complicated. His films remain masterpieces, but they are stained with the pain of those who made them possible. Tippi Hedren made it clear she does not want Hitchcock erased. She wants him understood. She wants the full picture seen. Because only then can we truly learn. Only then can we prevent the same patterns from repeating. Hollywood has changed since Hitchcock's era. Women have more power, more voices, more protection. But the lessons remain urgent. Fame does not excuse abuse. Genius does not justify cruelty, and silence protects only the powerful. Tippi Hedren refused to stay silent. And because of her courage, the world now knows the truth. Alfred Hitchcock was the master of suspense. But the real suspense was never on screen. It was in the question no one dared ask. What happened when the camera stopped rolling? Now we know.